America's enemies must never know our plans or believe they can wait us out. I will not say when we are going to attack, but attack we will.
No, that was Donald Trump last night in the primetime policy address. He was expected to announce a troop increase. He didn't. He promised victory and peace, but most people who understand that region of the country say both are impossible. And the conservative news website Breitbart, which of course his boy Steve Bannon went back to running, called it a flip-flop from his longtime calls for an immediate withdrawal from Afghanistan. But what was striking about this was the statement on bigotry.
When we open our hearts to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice, no place for bigotry, and no tolerance for hate. The young men and women we send to fight our wars abroad deserve to return to a country that is not at war with itself at home.
Okay, that was weird. Now, again, Trump is desperate for a do-over after he screwed up his response to the terror in Charlottesville. He is trying desperately to turn the page. The question is, will that actually work? If you look at recent poll numbers, it ain't working. A majority of Americans, according to an ABC Washington Post poll, disapprove of Trump's response to Charlottesville. At 56%, just 28% of Americans approve of how he handled Charlottesville. Now, half of all Americans say they do not support the alt-right, which we call white supremacists. But, no shock, 10% do say they support the white supremacists. Again, that's no shock. I keep telling y'all, Jim Crow had children and grandchildren. 1 in 10 Americans told a pollster they do support white supremacists. Again, not shocking. An NBC Marist poll shows Trump's base may be eroding. His approval rating in 3 states he won in November dropped below 40%. In Michigan, it is 36%. If you go to his job performance, of course, is 55% disapprove. Pennsylvania, 35% approve of his job performance. In Wisconsin, 34% approve of his job performance. He is having a serious problem. Now, since his disastrous statement defending white supremacists in Charlottesville, there's been a growing backlash against him, including a mass exodus of members of presidential committees and boycotts of events involving the president. HBCU presidents who met with Trump in February are canceling plans to attend next month's National HBCU Week in Washington, which was a follow-up to the February meeting where Trump promised to make historically black colleges a top priority, including a commitment to increase government funding. Congresswoman Alma Adams, who is co-chair of the HBCU caucus in the House, has called for the postponement of the 2017 National HBCU Week conference scheduled for mid-September. She said, quote, "It has become painstakingly clear that these promises are not being kept." Also, Trump announced he is going to be skipping the annual Kennedy Center honors this year after 3 of the 5 artists being honored plan to boycott the White House reception the night before the event, or were said to be considering it. Some even talking about boycotting the actual event. Also, members of the President's Committee on the Arts and Humanities, created by Ronald Reagan in 1982 to advise presidents on culture issues, they also quit. Quote, "We cannot sit idly by. Ignoring your hateful rhetoric would have made us complicit in your words and actions." Now, what Trump tried to do is he tried to say, oh, I was going to disband them. Okay, dude, you can't quit somebody when they've already quit you. We learned that in high school. Trump's public endorsement of Charlottesville neo-Nazi groups was captured on at least 3 national magazine covers, The New Yorker, Time, and The Economist, which featured Trump with KKK hoods and giving the Nazi salute. Also, Trump is being hit in the wallet. At least 16 big-ticket events scheduled at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Palm Beach, Florida, have canceled. They include fundraising galas for the American Red Cross, the American Cancer Society, and other groups. According to the Washington Post, Mar-a-Lago will lose hundreds of thousands of dollars from these cancellations. Guess what happens when you make crazy comments? So let's break down Afghanistan as well as, let's break down Afghanistan. as well as all of these issues with our guest, Tiffany Lofton. She joins me right now to my left. She, of course, is a civil and labor union organizer. We also have Sir Michael Singleton, a Republican strategist, and he also, of course, has his own podcast as well. Folks, let's first start with Afghanistan. What is interesting here is that this is a guy who talked with all this bluster. Oh, get out. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. Then he gives this speech. Wow, when you sit behind that desk and you realize that it's really tough being president of the United States, you've got enormous responsibilities to make. Somebody finally figured out this is not playtime. This is real, Sir Michael, when you're president of the United States.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump recognized when you run for office, which many candidates have done. I've worked with 3 presidential candidates, including a party nominee. You make a lot of statements, you make a lot of promises, but until you get elected, until you sit behind that resolute desk, reality really does hit in. And I have to say, I'm actually glad that he's listening to the generals and his advisors about how to properly handle Afghanistan. I do think pulling out quickly, immediately, would create a vacuum that could give terrorists an opportunity to do what we have seen them do in the past, which is why President Obama made changes when he was looking at Afghanistan or at Iraq based on John McCain, who really wanted to increase troop numbers because he was afraid that we would see deleterious impacts on the region by immediately pulling out. So this is no different than what the previous administration has done, and I think the president should go on this course.
But here is the problem, Tiffany. We've now been engaged in war in Afghanistan.
16 years.
I mean, we're approaching 2 decades.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's a news flash. They live there.
Right. Right.
We are occupiers. We are visitors. You can't wait out somebody who lives there. I mean, and I get it. So the question then becomes, will America operate in Afghanistan like we are in Japan? Well, we've had forces in Japan since World War II.
Right.
That's really what we're dealing with here.
Right, absolutely. There is something, I'll say this, Roland. 45 being president and his whiteness has made things very complicated. Whiteness is complicated. For him to be able to operate in his campaign and say we're going to pull out, we're going to end what's going on, it's a pointless war, and then, like Sir Michael said, realize that he is listening to his advisors, it might not be the best idea or the greatest idea. There are families that are being torn apart because we are talking about this. I have three cousins and 2 aunts who have served in Afghanistan in the war. And to know that they have returned, and my younger sister who has gone overseas and served, and her husband who have gone overseas and served. This is tearing families apart. And I think that the rhetoric that the president used that shocked me the most, Roland, is that we are talking about them versus us and an enemy. And now we're going to remain secretive about our plan. And that is going to continue to scare Americans. It's going to continue to scare the folks who are serving in the Army and in our military and our forces. And I think that that rhetoric is really alarming because it's going to panic people when it shouldn't have to panic people.
Well, look, I do think, and I spoke with someone who's a retired colonel last night on the phone about this issue, about announcing how many troops we're going to send by announcing when we're pulling out. That is a strategic miscalculation.
Of course
he referenced The Art of War, which I've read several times, and he made several good points. You don't want to tell someone you're fighting against, hey, this is when we're leaving. However, I do think the president should have done a better job of making clear to the American people what are our end results in Afghanistan. If we're there, are we there to make sure ISIS does not spread in Afghanistan? Are we there to make sure another terrorist group similar to ISIS doesn't create? Right? So and he didn't do that. So I think it is a legitimate question to raise, Mr. President. What do you hope to get out of being in Afghanistan? If we're going to be there, if we're going to send more troops, we will respect that. We will respect not giving a timeline for obvious strategic reasons, but explain to the American people what is the end result. And I don't think he did a good job.
Well, and about not only that, okay, we're not going to say how many troops we're sending. I'm sorry. Don't the American people have a right to know where?
It's us that he's sending.
I mean, he's sending young men and women who are Americans. You don't get to decide what information you're not going to reveal.
Well, Roland, again, I think that's a fair critique, but we also have to think about this strategically. I mean, we're fighting a war here. In my opinion, the Obama administration made many miscalculations with announcing this is when we're leaving. Or this is how many people we're sending here.
Stop. One second. If I recall, at the end of President George W. Bush's term, there was a negotiation that took place between the United States, Afghanistan, and also in Iraq. A negotiation. That was actually in a negotiation. So it wasn't, well, Obama announced this. It was actually a negotiation. But there was an agreement.
We also know, Roland, every president has their own mandate when they walk into that office.
No. But here's my whole point. If Bush negotiated an agreement with Iraq as to when American troops will leave, that was a negotiated date.
And that negotiation could have changed if the president said, according to our advisors, it is not in our interest to leave. So what President Obama did for Trump, he allowed the new administration to make new decisions.
But I am making the point that we have to be cognizant, and this is this is the arrogance of America, where we have to learn it's not just about us. We are in somebody else's country.
Oh, I'm not negating that.
If another country brought its forces to this country, America will be asking, when y'all leaving? This is let me make
Shermichael. The actual thing.
Would you prefer
there is no strategy at the end of it.
Shermichael, let me
here.
Shermichael, follow me here. Okay. Let me make it as plain as possible. If somebody visits your house, how long y'all here? The weekend, week, 2 weeks. Your family member, hold on, Shermichael. Your family member says, I don't know. You go, I'm sorry, what do you mean you don't know how long you at my house? How long are you gonna stay in my house, eat my food, how long are you in my space?
With no purpose.
Now, I'm making it plain for the person at home.
Yeah, that's a false equivalence.
No, it's not.
Yes,
no, it's not. Because Afghanistan, is Afghanistan a sovereign nation?
Sure.
Are we a sovereign nation?
Of course we are.
Does Afghanistan have the right to determine how long somebody's in their country?
Afghanistan has not requested for the U.S. to leave. Actually, they have requested for more help, more resources to assist them with combating terrorism.
Actually, when Karzai was president.
Karzai is no longer president.
Excuse me. Allow me to finish.
Okay, go ahead.
When Karzai was president.
When?
I'm giving you what is facts. There was a deadline. America has to also understand that we can't be so arrogant where we're going to tell you when we leave.
No, Roland, I'm not disagreeing with the premise of your point. What I'm essentially saying is we know for a fact that current leaders in Afghanistan, not past leaders, which is fact to what you have stated, have requested additional resources, additional help with combating terrorism. Now, to your point, I would agree the president does have to make the case to the American people and to our allies, to your point, what is the end result by combating this terrorism in Afghanistan? If the president would have said, we want to make sure that we don't create a vacuum where another group like ISIS can form, I think most reasonable people would say, okay, that makes sense.
But Tiffany,
we do not want to give the opportunity for another terrorist.
We're saying the same thing, but in addition to him not having a strategy.
But here's the other piece. Look at what our troops have had to endure, and their families.
I'm not
when it comes to when you have troops who are in a constant state of war, you are impacting with PTSD.
Absolutely.
You're impacting the health. You're impacting those families, multiple tours of duties.
Color, economic.
You better understand that politicians in this capital cannot go. We're going to send you here, send you there. That's your problem.
And send them out and not know how long they're going to be sent out for, or send them out and then not know when they're going to be able to return to their families.
But they do.
And
they know that again. They know all of those things.
I've had family members. No, I've had family members who do not know when they're returning.
No. But the generals is what I mean by they.
So by they understanding.
But
Michael, do you understand that also? Don't you understand that also creates a panic, which the president is good at?
I do
that creates a panic that folks just unnecessarily right now in this moment do not need. And you said that he's listening to his advisors and the generals, and that's great. The problem is he does not have a strategic plan. He does not know how long. He did not reveal that and say what the goal was in this inside of his president. And that is going to be a problem. And that's not fair for the American people who voted him into office.
What you're going
it's not the enemy, it's the American people. We voted him in office, so why wouldn't he do that? Didn't you vote for him?
That doesn't make any sense.
I tell you what, if you keep the American people in the dark and you keep your troops in the dark, then you're going to cause more problems. But that's fine.
He is not the expert on war.
So we'll see. Hold up. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
but
we will.
But also, the most fundamental issue is I'm concerned about those American troops, again, moving towards a 2-decade presence in Afghanistan. That's an issue.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh, my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no.
That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.